The canoe was barely visible under the algae, tangled in the reeds and coated in silt. It was October 14th, 2023, when a volunteer dive team exploring the southern tip of Moonstone Lake, Minnesota, radioed in what they thought was just an old capsized boat. But as they approached, they noticed the metallic glint of an object embedded in the lake bed. Beneath it, a crude, barnacle-covered structure shaped like a rectangular slab. What looked like melted candle wax and rusted chains clung to it. Then came the discovery that shifted everything, a fragment of human bone. The sheriff's office arrived within the hour, quickly sealing off the lake's southern cove. Forensic divers began their methodical sweep, and in the days that followed, a chilling truth surfaced. Beneath that altar-like formation lay several items: a burned journal, a partially dissolved cell phone, and bones that forensic analysts would later confirm belonged to a teenage girl who had vanished from the area in the summer of 2019. Her name was Erin Galloway, and for 4 years her disappearance had hung over the town of Harrowick like fog that refused to lift. Erin was 17 when she vanished, the last time seen near the edge of Moonstone Park, a heavily wooded recreational reserve surrounding the lake. July 21st, 2019 had started like any other summer day in Harrowick. Hazy sunlight, the buzz of cicadas, the muffled voices of tourists and locals meandering the lakeside trails. Erin had texted a friend that morning, "Gonna clear my head for a bit. Same spot, call you later." That was the last anyone heard from her. At first, no one was alarmed. Erin was independent, smart, prone to wandering alone, but always returned by dusk. But when 8 p.m. came and went, and her mother, Valerie, couldn't reach her, concern turned to urgency. By 9 p.m., the Galloways had called the Harrowick Police Department. Erin's shoes, phone charger, and journal were still in her room. The only thing missing was her cell phone and the green windbreaker she always wore on her walks. The search began immediately. Drones were deployed. Bloodhounds followed her scent to a trailhead near the lake, but it ended cold just before the dock. A pair of hikers reported seeing someone matching Erin's description walking toward the woods at 3:30 p.m., but couldn't confirm it was her. For the next several weeks, the lake was combed relentlessly. Dive teams, sonar scans, heat signatures, nothing. No sign of a struggle, no dropped items, no witnesses. The park surveillance footage was mostly corrupted due to a lightning storm the night before, save for one curious image. At 3:19 p.m., a figure in a hooded jacket, possibly Erin, was seen standing at the base of Dock 3. She seemed to be alone. A second frame, taken 2 minutes later, showed her still in the same spot, but slightly turned, as if reacting to a sound behind her. After that, nothing. By late August, with the trail cold and public attention fading, the case went dormant. Her family kept hope alive through Facebook pages, flyers, and missing persons networks. Candlelight vigils were held, but leads dwindled. Then came the discovery. What reopened the case wasn't just the physical remains, it was what was found beside them. Forensic technicians retrieved a blackened, waterproof notebook hidden inside a sealed container near the submerged slab. The writing inside was faded, smudged with moisture, but legible enough to be identified as Erin's. Her handwriting, her sketches, her entries. The final dated note read, "He watches from the trees. I think I'm being followed. I don't want to scare Mom, but something's wrong out here." The notebook also mentioned a name that would become central to the reopened investigation as Caleb, a person no one close to Erin could identify. Detectives reopened the original case file. Archived witness statements were reviewed. Cell tower pings from Erin's last known location were reconstructed. The area near Dock 3 was once again cordoned off, and this time, new eyes were on the footage and files with new questions. Why hadn't Caleb come up before? That same week, an officer revisiting the 2019 call logs noticed something odd. a 911 call placed at 3:41 p.m. on the day of Erin's disappearance. It had been categorized as a pocket dial, garbled audio, quickly dismissed. Now that call was pulled again. The filtered audio revealed a single audible phrase. "Don't," he said not to. The voice was Erin's. And with that, the case was no longer about a girl who vanished. It was about a girl who might have tried to warn someone. As forensic anthropologists began assembling the remains, DNA sequencing was fast-tracked. Matches confirmed what Erin's family had feared but never truly accepted. The bones beneath the lake belonged to her. But the case was just beginning. Questions multiplied. The altar wasn't just debris, it had structural elements, metal rebar supports, melted wax residue, and fragments of photographs burned into the surface. There were traces of blood, likely animal, but inconclusive. Charred bone fragments from at least one other individual were found, non-matching. This wasn't an accident. Someone had built that platform. By November, the FBI had joined the case under the suspicion of ritualistic or symbolic staging, though they quickly ruled out any cultural or religious ties. Instead, the investigation pivoted toward individuals with access to the lake's southern edge in July 2019, a less trafficked, partially restricted part of the park. Only a few names surfaced. One stood out: Caleb Voss, 26 at the time, an ex-park employee who had left Harrowwick abruptly weeks after Erin vanished. At the time, he hadn't been interviewed. He would be now. The name Caleb Voss appeared for the first time in connection with the Galloway case only after the discovery of Erin's journal and the submerged altar. His presence in Harrowwick had largely gone unnoticed in 2019, just another quiet, seasonal employee working maintenance at Moonstone Park. He had been contracted for summer work, mainly clearing brush and monitoring trail safety. His departure, which occurred just 10 days after Erin vanished, hadn't raised any alarms at the time. Official records showed he'd resigned without incident. But now, investigators were asking why. Detective Lisa Marston, who had recently been reassigned to the reopened case, began retracing the 2019 timeline. Her team pulled Voss's employment file, logging his work shifts, signed trail reports, and activity logs. One thing jumped out immediately. On July 21st, the day Erin disappeared, Voss had logged routine maintenance at Trail 9 South, a largely unused path that ran parallel to the cove where the altar had been discovered. The problem: there was no recorded work order for Trail 9 South that day, and he had filed no written report afterward. Marston's team combed through archived park security footage again, this time from ranger checkpoints and parking lot cams. Though the cameras in the dock area were partially corrupted from the electrical storm, one angle from the ranger station recorded a vehicle entering the restricted southern trail zone at 2:58 p.m. A dark blue Chevy S10 pickup matching Voss's registration at the time. Voss had never been interviewed in the original investigation. Back then, focus had centered on Erin's known acquaintances, with law enforcement dismissing the possibility of a stranger abduction due to lack of evidence. But now, 4 years later, with remains, writings, and a trail of inconsistencies, Voss was considered a person of interest. Authorities located him in Duluth, Minnesota, where he was working at a landscaping company. On November 2nd, 2023, he agreed to speak voluntarily with detectives. Calm, composed, and unusually cooperative, Voss claimed to remember Erin's case, stating that it had haunted the town for years. When asked about his movements that day, he said he had probably worked the southern path, doing light clearing work, though admitted he couldn't recall specifics. He denied knowing Erin and insisted he'd never interacted with her, but inconsistencies quickly emerged. Phone records from 2019, retrieved via warrant, revealed a 26-minute phone call between Caleb Voss and a disposable prepaid number the afternoon Erin disappeared, starting at 3:17 p.m., just 2 minutes before the last known image of Erin was captured on the dock. The burner phone was never registered, and authorities were unable to trace its owner. Even more curious, the call originated from a cell tower within 600 meters of Dock 3. When confronted, Voss claimed he used multiple phones due to poor signal strength in the park, an explanation investigators found unconvincing. A forensic sweep of Erin's recovered cell phone, though water-damaged, yielded a single data packet extractable from a residual backup sync. It contained one image, blurred, dim, apparently taken hastily. It showed trees, part of a path, and what appeared to be a male figure in a green work vest facing away from the camera. Digital enhancement was inconclusive, but it was enough to refocus attention on Voss. Meanwhile, Erin's notebook provided more than vague paranoia. 2 pages in particular, dated July 14th and July 20th, described a man she'd seen off-trail near the cove. Someone who she claimed was watching, but pretending to be busy with tools. Her writing became fragmented, as if trying to capture moments of panic. He waits, keeps showing up, not a hiker, not a ranger, always alone. I saw his truck again near Dock 3. The Galloway family, now forced to relive the trauma in public view, remained quiet. Valerie Galloway refused interviews, her attorney confirming she was cooperating but emotionally overwhelmed. Erin's father, estranged from the family since 2017, surfaced with a public statement urging a full federal investigation. Adding to the growing body of evidence, sonar logs from the initial 2019 dive searches were reviewed. Shockingly, they showed an anomaly recorded near the same submerged area where the altar was recently discovered. At the time, it had been dismissed as debris. That oversight now raised disturbing questions. Had the altar been there all along? In December 2023, the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit was brought in to review the altar site. The structure was reconstructed in a lab, and preliminary forensic work identified several crucial elements. Melted synthetic wax containing animal DNA, likely used in staged ceremonies, partial fingerprints on a glass bottle found wedged into the altar's corner, charcoal residue, and scorched wood beneath the stone, indicating controlled fire remnants of a belt strap. Fused with a metallic clasp, buried near the bone fragments. Then came the turning point. A partial DNA profile was extracted from tissue embedded in the corroded belt buckle. Though degraded, it was viable enough to cross-reference. It matched Erin Galloway with 96.3% certainty. Detective Marston held the evidence file quietly for a long time after the lab call. It was not a breakthrough that solved the case, but it was irrefutable. Erin had been bound. The implications were immediate. Prosecutors began preparing grounds for a formal interrogation of Voss, now seen as a potential suspect in a homicide investigation. Yet the case remained circumstantial. No eyewitnesses, no confession, no direct evidence linking him to Erin's final moments. Then came another discovery, one that didn't belong in the lake, one that no one had seen in 2019. Divers found a silver chain tangled in underwater roots, about 15 feet from the altar site. Attached to it, a locket. Inside, a folded photo of 2 teenage girls. One was Erin, the other still unidentified. The back of the photo was smeared and faded, but one word remained legible: Cal. The discovery of the locket changed the tenor of the investigation. Until that moment, the case had leaned on fragmented evidence, partial DNA, a submerged journal, inconsistent timelines. But this small, rusted object offered something new, a direct connection. The image inside showed Erin Galloway, her hair slightly longer than in her missing person photo, smiling with another teenage girl whose face was partially water-damaged but still faintly recognizable. The inscription on the back, Cal, could be short for Caleb or someone else entirely. Detective Lisa Marston immediately submitted the photograph for restoration and facial recognition. Within 48 hours, FBI image analysts had enhanced the secondary face. The results surprised everyone. The second girl was identified as Jenna Holbrook, a 16-year-old from the nearby town of Belridge, who had died in a reported hiking accident just 8 months before Erin's disappearance. Jenna's case had been brief and unremarkable in the eyes of law enforcement at the time. She'd been found at the base of a ravine in the northern section of Moonstone Park, with injuries consistent with a fall. No autopsy had been requested by the family. Her parents, reclusive and devout, had declined a full post-mortem for religious reasons. The death was ruled accidental. Now, that assumption was being revisited. Erin and Jenna had never been known to be friends. They attended different schools in different counties. There were no shared extracurriculars, no overlapping social circles. But the photo told a different story. The two had clearly spent time together, close enough to warrant a keepsake. Investigators pulled Erin's social media records again, this time searching for any trace of Jenna. Buried deep in a deleted private album synced from Erin's old tablet, forensic analysts recovered 2 time-stamped photos. Both featured a group of 4 teenagers on a rocky bluff overlooking Moonstone Lake. The photos were blurry and poorly framed, likely taken in motion. But all faces were eventually identified: Erin Galloway, Jenna Holbrook, a boy named Mark Pelham, and, partially obscured behind the others, Caleb Voss. The photo had been taken in May 2019, just 2 months before Erin disappeared. Mark Pelham, 18 at the time, had never been interviewed during the initial investigation. He'd moved out of state shortly after high school and was now working as a trail guide in Colorado. When contacted, he was hesitant but agreed to speak via video call. He confirmed that the photo was real and that Erin and Jenna had indeed spent time together that spring. Jenna was quiet, Erin too. They bonded over music mostly. "We met up a few times near the bluffs," Mark said. Caleb was weird. He hung around, said he was working maintenance, but he never actually did anything. He'd just show up. Mark described Voss as fixated on the girls, often lingering at the edge of their group without contributing. He'd ask them strange questions, stuff about the forest, about energy. Jenna used to laugh it off, but Erin got uneasy. Then Mark said something that stopped the interview cold. After Jenna died, Erin got paranoid. She told me she thought someone had pushed Jenna. When asked why he hadn't come forward in 2019, Mark looked down. "I didn't know what to believe. It was just a fall. Everyone said it was. I didn't want to stir things up." Detective Marston now had 2 deceased girls, both linked by an undisclosed friendship, both connected to the same man, and both tied, circumstantially, to the same stretch of isolated terrain in Moonstone Park. The original ruling in Jenna Holbrook's case was officially changed from accidental to undetermined, prompting a belated but urgent exhumation order. When the remains were analyzed by forensic anthropologist Dr. Kyle Reinhardt, subtle but critical inconsistencies emerged. There was a hairline fracture on the posterior occipital bone, Dr. Reinhardt noted, pointing to a digital reconstruction of the skull. It's the kind of injury that's extremely rare in a simple fall, more consistent with blunt trauma delivered from behind, right before impact. The timing, the injuries, the photo, all of it now painted a pattern. Investigators were no longer treating Erin's case as an isolated disappearance. They were looking at a possible serial pattern with ritualistic elements centered around the southern edge of Moonstone Lake. As the investigation intensified, local news began circulating the story of the submerged altar and Erin's remains. Media trucks lined Harwick's narrow main street. Journalists camped outside the sheriff's department. Community anxiety escalated. Moonstone Park was closed indefinitely, and then Caleb Voss disappeared. On the morning of December 12th, Voss failed to report for work. His supervisor called the Duluth Police Department when Voss also missed a scheduled landscaping contract. Officers dispatched to his rented cabin found it abandoned. The front door was ajar. The lights were on. Inside, neatly folded clothes, an open notebook and a coffee mug, still warm. But Voss was gone. In the notebook, investigators found several erratic entries. The writing was unstructured, rambling, part confessional, part philosophical. Lines repeated phrases like, "She knew too much," "The lake is a mirror," "You can't bury memory." Among the pages was a torn envelope addressed to E.G. Inside, a single Polaroid. Erin, near the trailhead, smiling, unaware. A multi-agency manhunt began. Airports, bus stations, train depots, nothing. The last confirmed sighting of Voss came from a wildlife camera mounted on the Moonstone Reserve perimeter fence. Time-stamped at 3:03 a.m. on December 13th, it showed a lone figure, matching Voss's build, walking into the woods, carrying a spade. The FBI deployed ground teams, drones, and thermal imaging. No trace. The weather turned. Snowfall blanketed the region, burying terrain and time alike. Meanwhile, another detail emerged. Jenna Holbrook's phone, reported missing at the time of her death, had been turned on for exactly 6 minutes on July 19, 2019. 2 days before Erin disappeared, the signal pinged from a rural communications tower near Dock 3. Erin, Jenna, and Voss. The triangle was no longer theoretical, and then 2 weeks after Voss vanished, a hiker spotted something frozen near the shoreline of the lake's northern inlet. A canvas bag. Inside, clothing, wrapped in plastic. A black windbreaker, size small. Erin's initials were stitched into the collar. Folded inside the pocket was a USB stick sealed in wax. The contents, only partially recovered, included a folder titled "Watch the Trees." The USB drive found inside Erin's windbreaker became the centerpiece of the final phase of the investigation. Digital forensic specialists worked for days to recover corrupted files. Most of the content was unrecoverable, data too degraded from moisture and time. But within the folder labeled "Watch the Trees," 3 video files were successfully restored. Each was short. Each seemed like it had been recorded secretly. The first, time-stamped June 28, 2019, appeared to be taken from behind a tree. The video was shaky, blurred at the edges. It showed Erin and Jenna sitting together on a flat rock overlooking Moonstone Lake, unaware of the camera. They talked, laughed, passed a notebook between them. In the background, the faint outline of a figure moved briefly between trees, too far to identify, but clearly observing. The second video was more disturbing. Dated July 18th, just 3 days before Erin's disappearance, it showed a clearing near Dock 3, in the same southern section where the altar had been submerged. The footage was darker, more deliberate. It captured someone, likely Caleb Voss, dragging a large bundle wrapped in tarp and placing it beside a shallow depression in the ground. After several minutes, he crouched down, opened the tarp and stared at whatever was inside. There was no sound, but the way he moved, slow, methodical, sent a chill through everyone who watched. The third video was the shortest and the most cryptic. Only 6 seconds long, it appeared to be filmed from Erin's perspective. It showed the dense woods around Dock 3, fast motion, likely while she was running. Just before the video cut off, Erin turned the camera on herself. Her face was pale, lips parted, eyes scanning. She whispered one word, "Cal," and then it ended. The USB stick confirmed what detectives had feared. Erin knew she was being followed. She knew who it was. And she tried to leave behind proof. Search teams re-scanned the areas near Dock 3 and the northern inlet, but with heavy snowfall, any remaining trace of Caleb Voss, or where he may have gone, was lost. As winter took hold, the investigation stalled. Law enforcement issued a federal warrant for Voss's arrest on suspicion of unlawful confinement, tampering with a crime scene and obstruction of justice, though formal charges related to Erin's death remained pending. In the absence of a body, motive, or confession, no murder indictment could proceed. The Galloway family held a private memorial for Erin in March 2024, 5 years after she disappeared. Valerie Galloway released a single statement through her lawyer. "She was more than this story, more than evidence. She was my daughter. To this day, Caleb Voss remains missing. Some believe he's dead, lost in the woods. Others believe he escaped, perhaps even planned it. Theories swirl online that the altar was part of something larger, that Jenna's death was no accident, that Erin was silenced for discovering too much. None of it has been confirmed, none of it has been disproven. Moonstone Park reopened in May 2024, but the southern section near Dock 3 remains closed to the public indefinitely. A faded missing persons sign still stands at the trailhead. Every few weeks, someone claims to see a shadow in the trees, a figure near the water, an old truck rusting behind the pines, but when rangers go to investigate, there's never anyone there, and the lake remains silent.